Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at the big ideas for section 3.2 part 4. And we want to start off by looking at particular types of points. In this case, we're going to be looking at points that have leverage. So let's first look at leverage points and what does that mean? Well, the definition of leverage points would be points that are outliers in the x direction are points that have leverage. It's very important that we recognize that points that are outliers in the x direction are points that have leverage. So if I was looking at these two scatter plots, this original scatter plot right here is looking at mass compared to some kind of rate, and there's our line of best fit right there in the middle. Well, this group of points over here is this original scatter plot. But take a look at this point way over here. This is a newly added point to our data set. It's one that maybe that was left out. But this particular point has leverage because it is an outlier that is in the x direction. So it has leverage. Now, if we had another point that was way down here, maybe in this spot, that would be another point that would be an outlier in the x direction, and it would have leverage. So that's a definition of a type of point that we need to learn about. So this entire lesson was about outliers and where they are and how do they change and affect this least squared regression line. Now, you can see that this outlier right here, how did it affect the least squared regression line? Well, the slope stayed the same. The slope right here is 26.8, and it's still really close to 26.8. And the reason why the slope stays the same is because that point, yes, it has leverage, but it's still in line with all the other points. It is following the trend. So that's why the slope really doesn't change hardly at all with this point that has leverage out here. But let's take a look at a different type of outlier, and that would be an outlier that, give me one second, that would have influence. And how do certain points have influence on your least squared regression line? Well, an influential point in a scatter plot would be a point that when it is removed, it would significantly change the least squared regression line. So if we take a look at this picture right here, this scatter plot, here's all of our points. And let's look at this point in particular. This point has leverage because it is an outlier in the x direction. It is an outlier in the horizontal direction. So it does have leverage, but it is also influential. And the reason why we say it's influential is because of what it does to the line of best fit. So this red line right here is our line of best fit with this point over here. But if we were to take that point away, if this point were to go away, we can see that this is the regression line if we omit that point. And so this blue line right here is our line of best fit, or the least squared regression line, if that red point goes away. We can see that the difference between these 2 points is pretty significant. The slope has definitely changed. So not only does this point over here have leverage because it is a point that is an outlier in the x direction, but it also has influence because when it is gone, the slope changes significantly. Well, what about this scatter plot and this outlier over here? Well, here we've got our line of best fit, and it goes along with this scatter plot, and we have this outlier. It is definitely an outlier. It's pretty far away, but it is not an outlier in the x direction. In fact, it's in the x direction, the horizontal direction, it's almost right in the middle. So it really well, I should say this point does not have leverage. Now, how would this point change our line of best fit? Well, it definitely would not change the slope very much. If this point went away, the y-intercept might change a little bit, but it would not really change the slope at all because it is not an outlier in the x direction. So this point right here, yes, it's an outlier, but no, it does not have leverage, and it definitely does not have influence. So with that said, I want to make this point. Usually, influential points, remember, an influential point is a point that when it is omitted, it will change the slope. Change the slope. Influential points usually have leverage, but not all points that have leverage are influential. Okay, and we've seen a couple of examples like that. This point has leverage and it is an influential point because when it's gone, the line, or I should say the slope, changes. But if we go back over here, this point, yes, it has leverage, but if it were to go away, we'd be back over here, and we can see that the slope does not really change hardly at all. So this point has leverage, but it is not considered an influential point. This point has leverage and is considered an influential point. And this point right here does not have leverage, and it would not be considered a point that has influence either. Hopefully this helps you understand influential points and points that have leverage and how outliers can change things in our regression equation. And hopefully you have a great day.